wants to be king!
Today I want to talk about Top Gun Maverick. Now, most people that have seen that movie have given it rave reviews. And honestly, I can't find one thing that I would pick in the movie that I would say I would rather them not have done that. It was a great movie. It was absolutely dead on target what it was supposed to be. And because of that, because it was exactly what I believe it was supposed to be, that's why I think this film at the same time with its brilliance was horrible. Now, before I get to the horrible part, I want to talk about the badass part. A couple of years ago, I pretty much swore off Hollywood films. I said that I wasn't going to go support any of that stuff anymore because there was an obvious agenda being played out where, you know, we've got these weirdos, transformers, limp-wristed men and women dominating what used to be the prototype for what a masculine man was, especially in a combat theater. And it got so ridiculous with all the wokeness that every film had to have these abominations in it. And I would normally be very hesitant to go see a movie like Top Gun with the current climate with equity and inclusion and all the affirmative action stuff that has degraded and eroded our world and the psyche of the people who line up to be the next affirmative action hire. I would normally cringe at the idea of going to see a movie that was made in Hollywood right now. But because it got such rave reviews from my friends and acquaintances that were in the military theater, I had to go check it out. I had to go see, because if nothing else, I grew up in the Top Gun, the original Top Gun era. And I remember every day in between our two-a-day sessions in football, we would watch Top Gun and watch Purple Rain. Every single day in the summer, that were the two movies. We wanted to be warriors and we wanted to be smooth with the women. And so those were the two popular movies at the time, and that's what we watched every day. And I remember, watching all the scenes, the volleyball scene, the fight scenes, all of that, all of the things that were embedded in that movie. I remember walking out of the theater thinking, man, I want to enlist. I want to be a fighter pilot. It made you want to engage. And so, going into this movie, hearing such rave reviews, I went into the movie expecting to enjoy it, but I expected to also find something in the movie that I could pick at and say, you know what, I didn't like that, But to be honest, there was absolutely nothing. The only thing that I would say that I don't really like, that I think was somewhat cowardice, but is still indicative of why I feel at the same moment that this film was terrible, was that there was no real clear enemy. And the first one, we knew who the enemy that we were engaging was. We had a very clear understanding who they were. And in this movie, it was kind of left to one's imagination. And so, that part of it, that's probably the only thing that I could look at and say, they should have made the movie for the times, and if the Rus are the enemy, then so be it. If it's a little panda bear, then so be it. Whoever it is, but this one was just it's a random cloaked enemy that was a threat. But the movie overall was fantastic. Storyline fantastic. There was no part of that movie that fit the modern talking points, the modern agenda. There's no parts of that movie, of this new Maverick movie, that resembles the Army ads and all of the things that people have poked fun of, even other countries have poked fun of with our, I got two moms and look at me, I'm gay and look at me. There was not one bit of that. Even the female pilot that was in the movie that's very believable, because there's been female pilots in the combat theater for a long time. Maybe not in America, but it's not a novelty. In Russia, in World War II, they had a woman named Valentina, and I won't even attempt to say her name, but she was a badass. She got awarded the Russian Medal of Heroism, and that was that's quite a task for a woman in that era. So that wasn't even a big stretch. And for all of those reasons, for all of the things that I've said that make this movie just probably one of, if not the most badass sequel that I've seen to a movie, all of those things are why I think it's absolutely terrible at the same time. And this is why I think that. There's only really one reason why the Beast system would allow a film like this to be made. Although Tom Cruise is a hell of a Hollywood star, he still has strings connected to him. So he's not making a film that's going against the grain of his handlers. He's actually made a film it's a necessary offering to the people right now. And once you've been around long enough, once you understand how these things work, how the very thing that they say that guy over there is doing, that they do here, it's what we've perfected it. And that is to move the public through Hollywood. Now, if you're honest, for the past 5-10 years, we have emasculated men, boys, anything resembling aggression, anything that falls into their toxic masculinity umbrella has been deemed just an abomination and a threat to our society, all the way up to our military ranks. The commercials and ads that they've had up to very recently have been catering to the weirdos and weak people in our community. They have dismantled, they've removed the real patriotic men and women who have enlisted, the people who you want in your military. They've pretty much purged those people out and put a bunch of rainbow applicants in there and really dumbed it down to the point where our military is just a shell of what it used to be. And now, because our economy is falling apart, our social, cultural climate is everything is going to hell right now. Just as in Rome, our so-called leaders are going to get our country, our nation involved in another conflict. And now, because they need resources of a humankind, they're trying to spark that feeling in the hearts and souls of our young men who fall into the theaters and watch this movie. While I think that this movie was an excellent film, I understand exactly what it is, what I believe it is, and it's just a propaganda piece that is made to do exactly what the first one was, to spark the hearts and minds of young men so they will go enlist and be cannon fodder for these lambs in these useless wars. Now, am I saying that you shouldn't go watch the movie? Absolutely not. I think every American should go watch this movie. If for no other reason, it will give you a picture of what men look like, what fathers look like, what leaders look like, and what American patriotism looks like. That's the things that we have allowed outside forces to destroy. And if we found ourselves in a conflict, unlike our predecessors, unlike the men and women who stood to in World War II, we don't have any of the things that held the fabric of our community together. We have willfully given them away for the semblance, for the illusion of security and safety of the same leaders that are going to walk us into a conflict. Now, this is just my opinion, but do not be surprised if in the next year or so, because this current buffoon that we have being our puppet now, because he is sliding so fast and so far down the hill. The only way for weak leaders to try to get the community, the public, back underneath them, back behind them, back supporting them, is to start a conflict. We've got massive amounts of enemies. We've got major nations that have no reason to respect us anymore. And yet, and still, I believe these people are going to walk us into another conflict. And because of that, Hollywood had to put out a movie that goes against their own woke agenda to wake up the lions. What I'm saying is this: the film is amazing, but I would not, at this point in time in our country's history, I wouldn't let my son or my daughter or anyone that I had direct influence enlist in this military. I would explain to them why they felt that way about that movie, but I would also explain to them why they should fight that feeling, because the people holding the strings at the other end don't give a shit about your safety, about the country, about any of that. And that's the problem that I have with this movie. That's why I feel that while it's an excellent film, it's terrible in the same breath, because there will be young boys and girls who walk out of that theater and into the recruiter's office, and they will find themselves in a military that looks nothing like the one that was on that movie screen. Out.